Okay, what about the first whole food produced by genetic engineering? Many of you have heard of that food. It was called the Flavr Savr Tomato. And again, by the way, it's important to emphasize here that L-tryptophan supplement, as I noted, the bacteria were not what is called transgenic, at least in terms of the main genes that were given them to produce that substance. Those were extra copies of its own gene. Now, they were also at one point, to really crank it out higher, they were given a booster from another bacteria, I believe. It could have been a virus, but anyway, a different species. So in that sense, the latest version was transgenic to some extent. But the main gene, the main product being put out, was a product that it ordinarily produces. So it's very important to note that, and to note that the Flavr Savr Tomato, the first whole food, was not transgenic in that sense either. It was just engineered in a way to turn off one of its own genes, to turn off the expression of one of its own genes. So this is important to bear in mind. Neither of these was producing an expression product from a foreign gene. So in other words, it implicates genetic engineering as a whole. It's wrong to focus on just the expression product of any foreign gene that is put in, because that could be a problem. But there is an underlying risk anytime an organism is transfigured through genetic engineering. And that's the important point. So getting back to the Flavr Savr Tomato, it had just been engineered in a way to turn off the expression of one of its genes, which was supposed to allow it to withhold its flavor and not be soft in shipping and basically taste better and ripen more slowly, or to stave off the process that happens to soften it up. So basically, it was to allow this tomato to ripen on the vine and then be shipped and still be firm in the stores. It turned out being a commercial flop for several reasons, but that was the intention. But that company did something that it was not required to do at the time. It had a lab do testing on that, and the tests did show a curious pattern of stomach lesions to the rats that were eating the food in the experimental group. Now, when the FDA, then it submitted that data to the FDA. Now, the FDA's pathology branch, when they looked over the data, they said there is the pattern of stomach lesions raises, these are basically sores, erosions in the lining of the stomach. They raise a safety issue. They said, to resolve this issue, we need to have more tests done. The company has to perform more tests. Now, this was the FDA's pathology branch, the head of the pathology branch, some of its top people speaking on behalf of the branch. There were other experts at the FDA who looked at that data and concurred that a safety issue was raised that was not fully resolved by the data, that more testing was required. What did the FDA administrators do? Well, by the time that had happened, they had decided that they didn't want to require any safety testing of any genetically engineered food, so they had come out with a presumption in May of 1992 that all genetically engineered foods can be regarded as safe, that none of them needs to be tested. So this information, this problematic information from their own pathology branch and other experts was coming to them in '93. They didn't like to hear that, because that went completely against the presumption that they had issued in May of 1992. So basically, they did not require the manufacturer to do more testing. The manufacturer decided to stand pat. Why do more testing that could create disclose problems when you don't need to? What's more, so they didn't do any more testing. So the FDA bureaucrats declared that their scientists had reviewed the tomato, reviewed the data on the tomato, and concluded that it was safe, and therefore they said this tomato can be marketed. That was an outright lie. Oh, but there's more. Remember I said besides the stomach lesions, there was an independent issue involved with that tomato? Well, there was, because it's an issue that actually became shared by many other genetically engineered crops. See, to be able to select the few cells that survive the genetic engineering process and or successfully grow to adulthood and can be transformed into a mature plant and express the trait that's desired. Only a very small percentage of the cells that are subjected to the process actually are successfully transformed. So